Michael Patterson, a 38-year-old state trooper, cherished his role as a police officer above all else. Patterson had not had an easy life. His mother took care of him alone due to the sudden death of his father only a couple of months before he was born. They had always struggled financially to get by, not to mention the social pressure his mother was under not to remarry and become the only independent single mother in the neighborhood. Perhaps for that and many other reasons, when it came time to choose what he wanted to study, Michael had no doubt about what his choice would be. "I want to be a policeman, Mom. I'll be a cop, and I'll take care of you forever." But the reason we are telling you this story is not to find out why Patterson became a cop, nor about how much he loved his job and how good an officer he was. It is about how capricious destiny can be and the twists and turns that life takes, being able to unite the path of two people who have never met before, and that this encounter will be a turning point in their lives that they will never forget. Something Michael discovered one quiet summer morning while conducting a traffic stop at one of the city's hotspots. Throughout his career, Patterson had made thousands of traffic stops all over the city. It wasn't his favorite thing to do, but it was part of the job and he did it without complaint. In fact, he was one of the officers with the most tickets on his record. Whenever he saw a driver doing something he shouldn't be doing on the road, he would quickly stop the vehicle and, in most cases, give him a ticket. Most of the tickets he wrote were for speeding and not wearing a seatbelt. However, that morning, the ticket he was about to write would be very different from all the previous ones. Actually, he wouldn't write any because when he was about to do so, he got one of the biggest surprises of his life. A couple of hours into the checkpoint, Patterson noticed a white BMW driving in the next lane. But what caught the officer's attention was not the speed at which the car was driving, nor whether or not it was wearing a seatbelt. It was the tinted windows, which were well over the Lego limit allowed in the state of Texas. Upon seeing it, Michael wondered how it was possible for the driver to see out of such dark windows, so he rushed to stop the vehicle to prevent the driver or anyone else on the road from being injured. If the tinting affected the driver's ability to see, it's incredible that there are still people who don't realize how dangerous it can be to wear tinted windows. You can't possibly see through those windows. Sooner or later you'll have an accident, exclaimed the disgruntled officer, swerving and pulling behind the vehicle to stop it in a white car. He hurried to pull over to the side of the shoulder as soon as he realized that a police car was cutting him off. As he got out of the vehicle, the driver looked a bit annoyed and did not seem to understand why the policeman was forcing him to stop. "Why are you stopping me, officer? I was barely driving at 50 km/h. It seems to me that on this stretch of road you can go up to 80 was not breaking any rules." "Am I wrong?" said the man, a little annoyed, but without losing his manners at any time and being very polite. He was a large adult man between 50 and 60 years of age, maybe more. He didn't strike Michael as the kind of guy who was going to give him trouble and wanted to get into an argument about why he was getting a ticket. Also, if you have not done so already, please subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell to get inspired by these real-life stories every day. Now back to the story. Michael didn't want to have any problems, so he quickly informed the driver of the reason he had stopped him. This left the driver quite confused. "Is it truly against the rules to have tinted windows like this? I swear I had no clue. I feel so foolish. I've been in law enforcement my whole life, you know. I should have known this wasn't allowed. Perhaps it's an age thing. Please forgive me," said the driver, feeling a bit overwhelmed by the mistake. Knowing that the man had been a police officer surprised Michael, and he began to see the man in a very different light. "Have you been a policeman? Have you?" Patterson asked him, very surprised. "That's right, my boy. I was a police officer for over 30 years. That's why I'm so embarrassed that another policeman had to stop me to warn me that I was breaking the law." "Oh, what a disaster it is to get older," said the man, amused, holding his hands to his head. "Don't worry. When I'm your age, I'm sure I'll make mistakes too. Besides, it's not such a big deal. The important thing is that you know about it now and can remedy it," Patterson replied, taking away the seriousness of the matter. Suddenly, the two men began to feel much more comfortable. And what should have been at first something unpleasant and full of technical formalities ended up becoming a pleasant conversation between friends. because the two of them did not know it yet. But that first meeting would be the beginning of a long and deep friendship, a friendship that perhaps had already begun before, long before that summer morning on the road. It turned out that the man's name was Matthew Bailey, and he had been one of the best police officers of his generation, something that caught Patterson's attention even more, and he couldn't help but find out more about the mysterious man he had been about to find. As they talked, Michael learned that Matthew worked as a policeman in another town not far from there. It turned out that Matthew had been a policeman in the town where Meachel grew up and lived until he was a teenager and where his mother still resided. Piscataway. You were a Piscataway police officer? My mother lives there. Well, I was born and raised there with her until I graduated as a policeman and was transferred here. What a coincidence, Patterson told him excitedly. But now it was Bailey who was intrigued. Suddenly, something in his face changed, and he seemed to remember something as he looked at Patterson more closely. After a brief silence that Patterson didn't quite understand, Matthew asked Michael when he was born, and Michael told him he was born in 1991. Upon hearing this, Matthew wanted more information. He remembered an incident that took place about 30 years earlier, and he had a feeling that Michael had something to do with it. It may seem strange for me to ask since we just met, but could you tell me what day you were born in 1991? I need to verify something that happened that year, asked the man cautiously. When Michael told Matthew that he was born on October 5th, 1991, Matthew asked him what street he grew up on. Michelle wondered what all the questions were about, but didn't hesitate to tell him the truth. Patterson told Matthew that he had grown up on Poe Place Street, and that in fact, he was also born there because his mother gave birth to him prematurely at home. I almost died, you know. Few people can say they were born at home in this day and age, but I was. Why is that so important for you to know? Patterson asked, intrigued. Hearing Patterson's response, Matthew nearly shocked the agent from the shout of joy he gave. It's you. I knew it was you. Since you told me you were born in the year 1991, there was something about you that looked familiar. I am the policeman who helped your mother give birth to her son. I saved your life. Michael, Bailey exclaimed with emotion. The turn of events had left him speechless. It took Patterson a few seconds to process the information. Suddenly, the man who had brought him into the world was in front of him, and to think that just a little less than an hour ago, he was thinking of giving him a ticket. At the time, I was still a rookie with only 3 years of badge behind me. I received an emergency call for Poe Place while on patrol. I was told that a young woman named Karen was in labor and might not be able to wait for the ambulance. I didn't think twice and headed over to the house to assist her in training. They prepare us for these types of emergencies, but you never think you're going to have to deal with one, let alone when you've only been in the service for 3 years. But there I was, next to your mother, ready for anything, Bailey explained excitedly. Michael was in shock, listening to him intently and trying to gather all the information. When I got home, I knew I had to deliver a baby. Most agents go their entire careers without delivering a baby, and I had to do it after only 3 years on the job. I was terrified, but not your mother. She was screaming in pain but wanted to meet you so badly. She didn't care. She was guiding me on how to help her. It was so exciting. I have never experienced anything like it again. I am not a father. I've never been married. So you could say that your birth was my closest experience to fatherhood, he confessed, very excited. I was about to cry. The baby Matthew delivered that day was Michael. Growing up, Michael heard stories about how a police officer delivered him, and that made him proud. That's part of why he wanted to be a police officer, but he never thought he would get to meet the Mandev. And in such a strange way, I owe you my life. My mother told me about you so many times. The story of my birth has been very famous among my relatives and friends. When I was a little boy, some people called me the miracle baby, and it was all thanks to you. Had it not been for you and your help, my mother could have died during childbirth, and I would not be here. What a great joy, said Michael, also very emotional, and with tears in his eyes. Do you still want to give me the ticket? Matthew asked jokingly. Michael burst out laughing and reached out to give him a tight hug, sealing their friendship forever. After discovering that Matthew is the man who brought him into the world, Michael didn't have the heart to find him. He was confident that Matthew would take care of the tinting on his own, and he was delighted to finally meet the agent who had helped him to be born. Without Bailey, he would never have been the person he was. He owed him everything, and now he could thank him for it. Without a doubt, it was the most important traffic stop of his entire career.